Mario Party 1, for being the start of the Mario Party series, often lives under the belief that the game is extremely unpolished and, for lack of a better term, extremely basic and plain. However, while that is true in some cases, I can't help put this game in my top 2 favorite games from the series. And maybe the nostalgia talking, but for the first game in the series, I honestly feel like it did a great job in making its presence known. Yeah, there were things that needed balancing and fixing, but in a strange way I kind of like it that way too. Sure, it was annoying that you lost coins in some minigames if you didn't win, but in another light, it pumped you up to even more to try and win the games too. But that's enough about the specifics. It's time to look at the top 10 best and worst minigames in Mario Party 1. Let's start with the worst list, just to get it out of the way, and it's kind of more fun. Number 10, Ground Pound. While I do like the idea of one-player minigames, being able to win some coins without the interference of other players, some of the minigames are, for lack of a better term, just completely lazy. And honestly, while Ground Pound isn't necessarily a bad game, it's just, well, let the video speak for itself. Riveting. There are a bunch of stakes you need to ground pound, but some stakes are flat and others are spiked. You get a quick glance at the beginning of the game before a bunch of butterflies come and obstruct your field of vision by landing on all the stakes. You need to pound all of the flat top stakes before time runs out. While it's honestly a good concept in theory, the butterflies are pretty much useless when it comes to their function. You can still clearly see which stakes are right and which ones are wrong, decreasing difficulty to the point of, well, what difficulty? Hell, even if you manage to, by some miracle of life, ground pound a spike stake, you still have enough time to recover and ground pound all of the right ones before the timer gets to 0. Hell, you can even make the mistake a couple of times and still be okay. If you want to make the game this easy, just freaking give the 10 coins to the player and save a bunch of time in the long run. Now, there are a lot of other games like this in the master list, but at least there is some degree of difficulty or challenge to them, whether it's actual memory and memory match, timing and slot machine, or paying attention in shell game and knock block tower. Ground Pound, on the other hand, was just not very well executed. Cover up the stakes completely and make one mistake an instant fail, and then maybe this game could have avoided this list. Number 9, Box Mountain Mayhem. I really like the idea of being able to win a multitude of coins, more than just 10 or 5 when it comes to minigames, but Box Mountain Mayhem is just, well, mayhem. At least you could say it's appropriately named for the purpose of this game, but that's really all it has going for it. The goal is to punch, kick, and ground pound a giant tower of blocks, collecting coins in coin bags that pop out of the boxes as you break them. Most boxes will give you just 1 coin, but some boxes will end up going crazy and sending you back a few feet, away from the tower of boxes. Sometimes these crazy boxes will have coin bags that are worth 5 coins each, but because you have been knocked away from the tower, your opponents who are closer to the action will be in a better position to pick them up than you, the person who actually made them spawn in the first place. And there is no way of knowing which boxes will do this, so it's just a random clusterfudge of coin collecting. I've walked away from this minigame before with almost nothing in my pockets while my opponents completely cleaned house, and you really can't say they did anything that spectacular either, just got really lucky with the random bizarre crap that happens in this game. Combine that with the weird camera angle and the fact that there are so few boxes, and Treasure Divers and Hammer Drop start to look even more appealing. Number 8, Skateboard Scamper. It's actually kind of a shame for me to put Skateboard Scamper in this list, because as a minigame concept, I'd honestly say that Skateboard Scamper is one of the best. What makes this game so low, though, is the fact that the game's camera kind of screws the game over. The goal of this game is to race your opponents to the end of a collapsing bridge while on a skateboard, rapidly pressing the B button to move forward and the A button to jump over obstacles. While seeming like a true test of skill in the most epic way possible, the problem of Skateboard Scamper lies in the fact that you can't actually outspeed or overpower your opponents. Because the camera is fixed on the braking road behind you, you're locked into a position at approximately the middle of the screen. No matter how hard you mash the B button, there's no way you're going to get any faster. So what the game boils down to is a very last minute decision of who wins. A decision that feels more random and luck-based than anything. It's a bummer that such an epic game has to come down to a random instance of luck, or at the very least, a random instance of who can destroy the hell out of that B button at the very end of the game. If only the game would have been programmed a little differently. Oh well, as far as my advice goes, just make sure to grab that coin bag in the middle of the game, because it's better to go home with a guaranteed 5 coins than to randomly get determined to go home with nothing. Number 7, Tightrope Treachery. Get ready to see a lot of 1 vs 3 minigames in this list, because Mario Party 1 had a chock full of controversial ones, starting with this one. Unlike most of the other games in this list, Tightrope Treachery definitely has its fun moments. However, I feel like it takes way too long to get to those moments. The single player must try to make it to the end of a giant tightrope, while the other 3 players try to blast him or her off with cannonballs, or at the very least, stall the player so time runs out. The cannonballs don't really have the power to knock the player off, but a direct hit will cause them to be stunned for a short 2 or 3 second duration. Balancing on the tightrope isn't exactly that challenging, and even after getting hit, you have a small window of time to get readjusted to your controls before you start moving again. The problem comes from when the team of 3 manages to get their act together and continuously assaults you to the point where you can't even move. It also feels like the odds are stacked a bit too against you at times. The team of 3 doesn't exactly have an easy road either. You will no doubt be wasting precious time in figuring out the best angle to fire at your opponent, and the angle isn't exactly clear most of the time. Not only that, but with the screen transitions and the way the boat moves and stops, you could be spending more time readjusting yourself and re-angling your shots than you are stopping your foe. One thing I can give this game credit for, though, is when you get to the close to the end, it does start getting really exciting and intense for everyone involved. Aside from that, though, the game itself just takes way too long, and both teams are endlessly plagued by stacked against controls and mechanics. Number 6, Limbo Dance. How low can you go? Well, maybe not to the very bottom of this list, but Limbo Dance does make it very close to one of the worst games in Mario Party 1. The object of the game is to hop yourself to the very end of the limbo track, pressing the A button enough times so that your character carefully goes under every single limbo bar without knocking it over. Press A too many times, though, and your character will fall over backwards, causing you to fail. Although the first few limbo bars are easy to tackle, the game starts to get really challenging towards the end, almost to the point where it feels impossible. It's not, by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, sometimes you can get lucky and get the ridiculously easy limbo course, but the main trick of this game will almost always result in you pressing the A button in a rhythm with your about to fall over animation, just enough so you don't fall over, but still stay pretty low. The problem with this, even this is not necessarily a guarantee for success. Honestly, there are times where I just fail on purpose immediately just to get the game over with. It almost makes me wish I could stand playing as Peach just so I could see her run right into the limbo bar. Number 5, Ghost Guess. With the name of this minigame, you would almost assume that this is a luck-based minigame. Well, surprisingly it's not, but I still have my doubts. The goal of this game is to guess which ghost has the treasure chest you need in order to obtain 10 coins. The trick is to find the leader of the boos, which is always the boo whose shadow moves first. However, I swear that I've picked the leader before just to get it wrong. Maybe it's just my terrible attention span and I just suck at these types of minigames, but when it comes to Shell Game, a very similar premise, I don't seem to have the same issues that I have with this one. And even when you take those issues out of the equation, I don't really have much to say about Ghost Guess aside from, well, meh. Number 4, Paddle Battle. Well guys, it's about that time, so get your palms ready to spin that freaking control stick. Okay, so I'll be going into more detail about this controversial control stick mechanic later on, but these games are the absolute worst in Mario Party. They are notorious for frustration, loudness, broken controllers, and hell, even injury. Let's just say the control stick for the Nintendo 64 controller wasn't exactly built for this type of motion. The goal of this particular 1 vs 3 minigame is to paddle your lifeboat to the opposite side of the riverbank where a dangerous spear guys rest. If you get too close, the spear guys will pierce the pockets of the team and give their coins to the other team. How do you paddle your boat? By viciously spinning the control stick in circles. The faster you go, the harder you'll push the raft to the other side of the river. Although this game isn't the worst example of control stick spinning, it's still worse than the 3 other contenders on this list, mainly due to how high risk-reward the game is for the single player. If I were to assume correctly, the single player gets a small advantage when it comes to the frequency of control stick spinning, because the team of 3 needs to work together and row the raft in one quick motion together. However, this also means that if the team of 3 is on point, the single player doesn't really have much of a chance, and will get overpowered by the other team and lose a lot of coins in the process. Every time the single player gets poked, he or she loses 3 coins, with one member from the team of 3 getting 1 coin for each strike. On the flip side, if the team of 3 gets poked, each member will lose only 1 coin, giving the single player 3 coins. So at the end of the day, the solo player really has the most gain or the most to lose. Even if the team of 3 gets poked more, nobody on the team will really have that much of a significant loss. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of control stick spinning and some coin swaps. That's really about it. And was it worth the injury you've done to your palm? Probably not. Number 3, Bash and Cash. If you are the single player, I feel incredibly sorry for you because you are going to get screwed over. What happens when you get locked into a room wearing a Bowser suit with a bunch of Mario characters wielding hammers? In this game's case, a bankruptcy. While wearing the Bowser suit, the solo player doesn't have a lot of mobility, just the ability to jump to an incredible height with the greatest of ease. Here are the problems with that though. 1, you have 3 opponents chasing you. 2, they can still hit you while you are in the process of jumping and or landing. 3, you have to wait a few seconds before you can jump again. And 4, this game just plain sucks for the single player. You lose 5 coins per hit, and whenever you do, the coin bag bounces around the room until someone picks it up. And let's face it, unless you want to risk getting sacked again, you are probably not going to get those coins back unless you are incredibly lucky. It's even worse when you get the Bowser space variation of this game, where the coins don't even bounce around, you just lose them. My only advice for the solo player is just to keep moving and try to outsmart your opponents. It probably won't work incredibly well, but it beats just standing there and being a punching bag. Also, if you somehow manage to outsmart your opponents in the Bowser space variation of this game, to the point of avoiding every single strike with the hammer, guess what? Bowser is going to take 20 coins from you anyway, so try to get hit at least 3 times in that version, just for the sake of losing less. Number 2, Piranha's Pursuit. Hey guys, let's take everything wrong with Skateboard Scamper and turn it into a 1 vs 3 variant. That's pretty much what you get with Piranha's Pursuit. The solo player must ride a skateboard down a desert path with falling trees and boulders with a vicious piranha plant on its tail. With the same Skateboard Scamper controls, the player must jump over all obstacles while staying ahead of the monster behind until making it to the goal line. But what exactly makes this a 1 vs 3 game? Well, in a literal sense, the team of 3 ground pounds a cloud that makes it rain above the piranha plant, making the plant get bigger in size and giving the beast a small boost of speed. In an actual sense, they may as well be doing nothing because the boost of speed never seemed to be enough to catch the solo player. The boost of speed is noticeable, and you can chain the raindrops enough to continually give the plant another boost whenever it runs out, but as long as the solo player is mashing that B button, the plant is never going to be able to cut it. So as a result, the team of 3 is destined to wait until the player actually screws up, and then try ground pounding at just the right time to give the plant enough of a boost to grab the player while they are caught off guard. Otherwise, just wait until the end and the inevitable 5 coin loss for each player. The solo player will probably screw up more than I'm making it seem, but even then, it's not always a guarantee either. And because of that, it's just another one-sided minigame that seems to go on longer than it really needs to. Number 1, Tug-o-War. A lot of people saw this game coming, but I'm not just placing this one here because of its controversy and notoriety. Tug-o-War is perhaps the most notorious for the control stick spinning, not necessarily because of how it's implemented, but just for how hard you have to spin the dang thing. This is another 1 vs 3 game where you are locked in a deadly sport of tug-o-war over a cliff with a very hungry piranha plant. Much like in Paddle Battle, the solo player has their own rhythm and frequency, while the team of 3 must be a bit more harmonious with their spinning and on time. However, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that it's just going to come down to a very violent thrashing of the control stick, and everyone involved is going to feel the pain, quite literally. You see, back in the days of Nintendo Power and when this game came out, there were numerous reports of hand injuries from these minigames. And in order to avoid any lawsuits and further damages, Nintendo released a glove to owners of Mario Party 1, in hopes of that gamers would wear the glove to protect their hands and palms from any damages. This was a very smart idea because I was the unfortunate recipient of a nice red callus on the exact center of the palm of my hand for an entire week thanks to this minigame. This combined with the fact that I really doubt they couldn't have found a different way for this minigame to control and work, and the scenario that the game never seems to end when you think it is, leading to even more pain and suffering, really just shows you how bad this minigame is, and a perfect contender for the worst minigame of Mario Party 1. So those were the worst games of the bunch, but let's go to a more positive note and talk about my top 10 best Mario Party 1 minigames.